Hi guys, thank you very much. So today I'm going to talk about what I call the web of assets. I had originally called the talk the web of value, but the web of assets, there are a lot of bankers here, and I think that's really what we're talking about. So the web's been around now for about 20 years, and the bank industry is like one of the major industries that really isn't on the web yet. So I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about banks as anti-innovators, and I'm going to talk about the web of assets and how banks can stay relevant. So banks as anti-innovators. The world needs innovation, and the economies are really not doing very well, and you can't legislate your way out of this. We need innovation to grow the economies and to help people throughout the world. And innovation starts with small startups. And they work on very crazy things in very strange ways, in ways that probably most bankers wouldn't understand. There's an example behind here, which is SoundCloud out of Berlin. It's a great, very innovative company. I'll have links to this presentation that they did afterwards for people who want to understand innovation. But banks are not very popular. My bank wanted to charge me €1,500 for developer docs. That should always be free. We can't open a merchant account, and European customers don't use PayPal. To open a merchant account, it was easier to create a Delaware LLC and process payments in the US. Tons of companies are doing this. And it seems absurd that people are doing this, but people are doing it in Europe, people are doing it in the Far East, the people doing it in South America, because banks are not willing to innovate or help innovators. So banks protect existing revenue streams. That's what we in the tech industry call the innovator's dilemma. This is a very famous book that probably every single tech exec swears by, about how if you have a really successful product line that's generating lots of revenue, you're not willing to risk that revenue to build whatever's going to replace it in 5 years' time. Because something will replace it. And banks need to learn this. So probably first good step is to read and understand the innovator's dilemma for bank execs. I'll go over this real quickly, but the European e-money legislation was probably set up by banks to avoid innovation. They set up very large barriers to entry for startups, and it's gotten a bit better now, but it's still quite difficult for startups to play along here. So the internet is designed in such a way as it routes around obstacles, and it was designed to survive a nuclear attack. And banks are an obstacle right now, so startups are working around it, as Chris spoke about before. So there are a bunch of new asset types that are completely different from traditional asset types. Virtual currencies, again, as Chris mentioned before. The picture here is from my local 7-Eleven. So you can buy Facebook credits, you can buy all kinds of credits in there. And people are using them for many different reasons. There's zero transaction fee, prepayment, and you can't be shut down because all of a sudden you're earning a lot of money. It's also very easy to integrate since you're in control of it. This is my startup, PicoMoney. We are basically a platform where anyone could go in and create a virtual currency. We will be launching soon, but we're kind of open. You can play around, but we're going to be launching with a lot of new services soon. Zopa is a person-to-person lending platform in the UK, getting very, very popular. Anyone can go in and lend money and earn considerably better interest than they would in the banks. In the same way, you can go in and also borrow money, probably at a better rate than the banks. Crowdfunding is another area where there's a lot of innovation going on. This is a Kickstarter, which is a site where if you have a product idea, you can go in and pitch it, and you can put a minimum amount you need to get this off the ground, and people will go in and back you. And they're not doing this for equity or interest. They're doing it because they think it's cool. And they might get first access to whatever the cool device is that you're designing. And this has become really, really popular. So now lots of people who had great product design ideas before, they're doing it here. And it's just not worth going to a bank or go to the traditional angel investment round. There's also community currencies. And Germany seems to have a lot of these going on. I haven't looked closer into detail about how they work, but I guess the name is Regiogeld. But there are lots of them all over, and UK in particular, Canada, also quite a few in the US. Many different models for them, lot of experimentation going on, but really they're all hacks around whatever the government currency is. Bitcoin, as Chris also mentioned, this is really, really interesting, and this is going to grow. And if it's not Bitcoin, that's going to be here in 5 years. Right now, there are 20 competitors that are being launched to Bitcoin, and none of them can be stopped by any government. They can only be stopped by the market. So there's also a lot of real innovation going on, because there's no barrier to entry. Anyone can go in and develop for these. So we now see 17-year-old kids in Hungary writing stock exchanges. You know, stuff like that just didn't happen before. And what's going to happen with these 17-year-olds are a bit more experienced, and they've done all the mistakes. I mean, there's some serious innovation going to be happening there. And the banks are just not really going to be involved. So, the web of assets. Well, we have the web, which is a bunch of resources all over the net, and all of them can be addressed uniquely. So the main concept of a web is a URL. So you can have pages, images, movies, whatever, they can all be located and interlinked. And that's where I think money and financial services has to go as well. So this is just an example of web e-commerce. So we have a shopping site, and that shopping site talks with a payment gateway such as PayPal. And all of that is the web. But then the transaction enters this weird unknown territory called, I call it the dark net, where it sends a message off to one party that gets passed along, and gets passed along, and gets passed along. And it's not web. It's old-fashioned, and it's frankly, to this day, if you talk to web developers, they just find it really, really absurd. So commerce with the web of assets is, you don't go through all these intermediaries, you just link to different asset providers. And you get, the transactions are also uniquely accessible on the internet. And also, it's not just about transaction, but a transaction data afterwards. So consumers can go in and they can have access to data that's hidden away in all their online accounts by sharing this kind of data. Different apps can do it. So the consumer can go through and share his purchasing history, his bank transactions, all of that with a service that'll make a nice pie chart. PayPal is probably the best we have right now. It's like they are operating a web of assets on top of banks, but it is a private web of assets. They are part of the web, but due to them being on top of the banks, they aren't as flexible as they will probably want to be. So we need standards. So this is what the banks come up with. Their latest standard that they're trying to push right now is so complex that they actually hired the Dummies Guide guys to create this book. It's insane. And basically, it's a messaging-based standard, a new big standard being pushed while everyone is on the web. And it's based on 1983 technology. It's based on technology that was designed for dial-up lines, mainframes, and batch jobs. It's ridiculous. So Open Transact is my version of what a standard should look like. And we have a lot of developers working with this now. Basically, this is all a developer needs to know to develop with a standard. This is the dummies guide for that standard. You could actually tweak the standard if you wanted to. That's how simple it is. And the main concept of it, though, is this concept of unique asset URLs, because everything's addressable uniquely. So, for example, if the ECB wanted to implement Open Transact, they would create this unique URL. And Deutsche Bank, they could do the same for their different kinds of accounts or different products. T-Mobile could do it for their prepaid accounts because they are essentially a virtual currency. You could even go so far as every single product that you have for sale could have an asset URL. The Open Bank project is a European, an EU project to create standards for banks that are open. And we're working with them to get Open Transact to be a main part of it. There's a lot more to it. You can go to their site and find out more about it. PaySwarm is a new standard as well. They are a little bit more advanced than Open Transact because they model the whole offer and acceptance and payment flow. But finally, now the W3C, which is the World Wide Web's official standard body, has now set up a group. We just had our first meeting last week, so some real standards are actually going to happen now. And I think a lot of companies are going to get involved. But right now, we're working on integrating PaySwarm with Open Transact. So how can banks stay relevant? I think Chris had a lot of good points about it, but you have to look at what happened with the telecom world. They had these massive infrastructure for voice calls. It was very inefficient. It was very big, had been built over decades. VoIP came around, and I don't know what the statistics are, but I'm guessing the majority of voice calls, at least international voice calls, are VoIP now. Like Skype is there, completely innovated in that area. So what banks need to do is join the internet. Please, it's been 20 years. And yes, you may have a website. Yes, you may have online banking. You are not on the web if that's all you have. It's your core business that has to get onto the web. That's really, really key. You can't go hide it away in some cellar with a bunch of nerds. You know, it has to come out, has to be exposed, and you know, it's going to be hard. But a way to start is create an experimental web bank, just really simple deposit account where you can transfer money from one person to another. Use some of these new open APIs. You need to minimize risk and barriers. It has to be very easy for someone to go in and open an account on it if you want people to start using this. KYC is know your customer, like the anti-money laundering rules, is where a lot of innovation has died. So what you can do, I believe, with just authenticating someone with Facebook, you could have a small account size, and that would be perfectly fine. Start with that. And no credit cards, because there are all kinds of rules. You don't want rules. You just want to simplify everything. Use 100% web infrastructure. Learn from Google, Twitter, Facebook, etc., and not from other banks, because most banks really don't know what's going on. Maintain all the existing systems. I'm not saying to dump your entire retail banking operation. Keep maintaining it, keep it separate, and at some point, you know, if you need to, get rid of all your branches, and etc. And bring in an experienced non-bank web team. Now this is key, sabotage. When you're trying to innovate in a large company with a big existing revenue stream, there will be sabotage. You'll get sabotage from pretty much every single existing department. They'll try finding all kinds of reasons why you shouldn't be doing this. And the IT department is the worst. I know that as an IT guy. There's absolutely no way we can move from mainframes to J2EE. There's no way we could, no, I'm leaving, the whole team will leave with me, all of that kind of stuff. They come up with, hinting at little things. We are a bunch of conniving geeks, really. I mean, we are really anti-innovators while we should be thinking about innovation. So you really need strong CEO board support. It has to come from top, and it has to be kept away from the rest of the business. Steve Jobs, famously, when he developed the Macintosh, he had a special building where the entire Mac team were, and no one from the Apple II department was allowed in. And he basically spoke to he told the Mac people to think of themselves as being absolutely superior to those guys. And the Apple II guys were like, what's with these Mac people? I mean, who do they think they are? We're the one making all the money. If you start hearing that, we're the ones that are making all the money. That's the innovator's dilemma right there. So separate it out, maybe, put a new development division near a university or something away from the head office. And let startups innovate for you. You don't need to come up and try to invent everything. Don't read all the posts about the latest mobile banking, this and that, and mobile payment, this and that. Let other people do all this innovation. You guys are bankers. Innovation is not necessarily, your greatest strength. So just have a very simple, open service. Let developers go in and do crazy shit in there. Do completely, insane whatever. Don't try and stop them, because out of these insane features will be the important core infrastructure of the future. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen. It's going to be an 18-year-old nerd who's spent 2 years doing stuff on Bitcoin. He'll all of a sudden come up with the best and most amazing new financial product in the future. And you can let him do that. And then you can buy him up if it makes sense. I mean, that's what Facebook does, that's what Twitter does, and Google does. They do that all the time. They buy up the innovators who develop on top of their platform. I talked about SoundCloud before. I would recommend you go to this link if you want to learn, particularly if you come from the financial world and if you want to learn what it's like to be an innovative startup. It's a great video, great comic book explaining how that works. Really recommend it. And, well, that was it, really. So you can find me on Twitter at PelleB and PicoMoney.com, and I blog at StakeVentures.com. I'll put this presentation up in SlideShare.
Thank you very much, Pelle. Are there any questions to Pelle? No questions from the audience? In fact, I do have one question. You said the big problem are the IT guys. Mm-hmm. When you told us how easy this all could be, my main concern was, what about the compliance guys?
Oh, well, they were the next on the list.
No, is it possible to do this with all the regulation that is in place for banks?
I believe so. I believe it's absolutely doable. As long as you keep it separate, keep things simple, and have low account balances, I believe you can do that in Europe today. And banks, of course, don't have to go through yet more regulatory. I mean, banks are set up already as banks, so you don't have to go in and find a bunch of money and go through the e-money regulation. I believe banks can just be an e-money currency in the EU already, I think. Yeah, should be simple.
Then perhaps somebody is going to try it. And I say, thank you, Pelle.
You're welcome.
Und wir machen weiter auf Deutsch.